Jason here. Happy Sunday. Continuing with the biophysical hero's journey, beginning in the fourth ventricle of the brain. This is the protoself. This is the home of Dr. Antonio Damasio's conception, the protoself. Proto being prior, beginning, not yet quite fully formed, the protozoa of what our human consciousness ultimately becomes. In this area of the brainstem, the medulla oblongata, the cerebellum, is associated with the reptilian cortex, fight or flight, freeze, baseline temperature, and breathing. And core survival. That's why it is associated with keeping the body warm, keeping the body breathing. This is the start of the hero's journey. And we are going to be using the cerebral spinal fluid in this analogy, in this elaborate metaphorical conceit, one might say. We'll be using the cerebral spinal fluid as these holy waters, this river Jordan that we have to cross in order to get to the promised land, to a new Jerusalem, ultimately to the Crystal Palace, Brahma's cave, the area where the core self and the mammalian midbrain, the princess, is locked in the tower, trapped by the overactive amygdala, the overactive fear, brought on by the reptilian cortex in a high beta brainwave of 20 hertz cycles per second, approximately 18 to 20. Anything above that, it's very hard to maintain diaphragmatic breathing. And to keep the pelvic floor relaxed, and to keep the area between the shoulder blades, that gets upper thoracic vertebrae, keep them relaxed. So how we're going to be crossing this river Jordan is via this magnetite Merkabah. Okay, the magnetite is in our spine, in our mind. It's in the areas around this mammalian midbrain and the pyramidal stack of the cerebral cortex, this hexagonal stack, this 6 level, and it makes basically a ring, but it's this central ring is with the 6 levels, this cortical stack. This is where most of your high level thinking is happening, in the integration of thought across these 6 layers. And the 5th layer, they have found, Dr. Hieros Benaclocha has found the magnetite stores. And these magnetite is a universal memory molecule. It stores memory, and then it responds to electromagnetic fields. So it stores the memory in terms of direction, where things are, location analysis, and it also stores memories. We don't precisely know how, but it relates to how it can respond to electromagnetic fields, and how it can help produce these nano bioholograms. And these holograms, we know that holograms are how the information seems to be stored. This is what Dr. Carl Pribram discovered. He discovered that memories are not stored in a one-to-one way within certain neural substrates or clusters of cells. They're stored across cellular networks. So we have cross-cellular networks within this overall pyramidal stack, and they're communicating via these nanobioholograms. They're sharing information holographically. And the microtubules, the proton spins, are becoming, in conscious thought, they're becoming quantum entangled. So they're sharing information at the speed of light, essentially. There's a level of non-locality, and the same thing is true with the dendritic arborizations. Not the final axon and the synaptic transmission that happens more slowly. But the dendritic arborizations, this is what Pribram discovered, they're connected in a non-locally. They're because of the proton spins and the electron spins are both quantum entangled. They've just it was 2022 when this Dublin study came out that sort of proved Arch OR, Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff, proved that there is quantum computing, if you will, happening with these proton spins. And we already know that it's the electron spins that can be quantum entangled in states of higher consciousness or even psychedelic states. It leads to the electron sharing. It leads to these macro holograms. In my opinion, it definitely leads to a desynchronization of the brain's default mode network. And the whole point of this is to reclaim the mammalian midbrain, to reclaim Sophia, to reclaim the princess, and to sort of marry her. And that's where the highest human self can finally exist within the brain. You know, it is true that the heart rate variability drives consciousness much more than any one area of the brain does. But within the frame of the brain, we do want the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and the striatum to be active. So we're getting active dopamine and we're getting the oxytocin. We have this bonding between the midbrain and the reptilian R cortex and the executive functions, the executive prefrontal lobes. This leads to a happy marriage, a happy family in the brain, which is ultimately what we want. We have an alpha wave of 8 to 12 hertz cycles stacked upon a theta wave of 4 to 6. And with that in mind, it's no difficulty if we begin to get excited and lose the diaphragmatic breath. We are not in the state of stress. The pelvic floor is still able to sort of rhythmically descend and ascend. That's what it's supposed to do. The sacrum is supposed to build a piezoelectric charge. The sacrum bone is made of these crystals, and like the pineal gland, it builds a piezoelectric charge. So you're really supposed to connect these two in a circuit. This is the cranial sacral rhythm, and we want a sine wave to kind of travel between these two areas, with the heart being the central junction, the central projector of the overall electromagnetic field, while we have a sense of consciousness being projected in the brain by this crystal palace holographic projector around the pineal and this central pyramidal stack. We know that the heart is actually projecting the field all around us. So the marriage that we want is in the mammalian midbrain. This is where we go to marry Sophia as the hero after we've sort of conquered the dragon. Except the dragon is really become our ally, has become, a means of flight. We can, we get energy from the dragon, the brainstem and the reptilian brain. We know it likes heat. We know it likes deep, expansive breathing to generate that heat. And once it's hot, it's happy. The reptilian cortex is not really an enemy. The alligator can become your ally, but yes, the alligator will get ornery if it gets cold. So the fourth ventricle sits in the brainstem, the literal evolutionary bedrock of life. And again, this aligns perfectly with Antonio Damasio's Protoself, the primordial neural patterns that map the body's internal state moment by moment. The Mythos. This is the reptilian cortex, the domain of the unthinking dragon of survival, homeostasis, and basic threat response. So number 2, crossing the Jordan, the cerebrospinal fluid in the Merkabah, the river. The cerebrospinal fluid flowing upward through the narrow cerebral aqueduct into the third ventricle is the ultimate metaphorical Jordan River. The vessel. Navigating this tight, pressurized descent requires your Magnetite Merkabah Mahayana, a great vehicle, which is Mahayana, of compassion. That's what the Mahayana is. It's the Buddha's way to get us all across. Okay, so it's stabilized by the brain's biogenic, as an internal, magnetite particles acting as a biological compass, guiding us like a lighthouse. Number 3, midbrain rescue, redeeming Sophia, the captive goddess. Arriving in the third ventricle, the hero encounters the mammalian midbrain and the limbic system, representing Damasio's core self, the conscious feeling of what happens. The Mythos. This is Sophia, the fallen Gnostic spark of divine wisdom, trapped in the emotional, relational, and dualistic mechanics of the mammalian brain. Then we have the alchemical marriage. The Buddha Prince Hero does not conquer or destroy this space. He redeems Sophia through love and tames the reptilian dragon into a phoenix ally, upgrading survival drives into raw, ascending spiritual energy. This is the right nostril breath. As you breathe in through your right nostril, you can close the left nostril with the finger if you like. The right nostril breathing is what heats up the left hemisphere of the brain. It just simply signals to your brain it's time to get alert, it's time to get aroused. And then once you have that alertness factor, then you switch to, you gaze through your left eye, number one, so you're simultaneously keeping this cross-lateral corpus callosum bridge open between your cerebral hemispheres so you can keep the visual, not visual abstract, visual spatial mapping going on, as well as keep this multimodal means of integrating linguistically what you're thinking and talking about with what you're seeing. Keep how you interact with the world is always being mapped metaphorically. These are George Lakoff's metaphors we live by. They're a semantic mapping that serves as an active bridge between the somatosensory cortex and Brodmann's areas 1, 2, and 3, and Wernicke's area way on the other side of the brain, the left hemisphere, where we have our deep linguistic mapping, if you will, our object mapping, object naming, definitions, all the relational, Indra's web of relations, so to speak. Okay. So we have the sensorium. That's Brodmann's areas 1, 1, 2, 3. This is the primary somatosensory cortex. Then we have 36 to 39, inferior parietal and temporal parietal areas. We want to ground this myth into visceral reality, translating the somatic data into a unified multimodal experience. Now, the fuel for this journey, we are activating the striatum. Activating the striatum provides the precise dopamine release needed to reward and reinforce this higher order integration. Now we need the calming current. Slower left nostril breathing selectively stimulates the parasympathetic system. Okay, the splenic and pelvic nerves down there by the pelvic floor can begin to relax. And once again, this pelvic balloon, if you will, descends as the diaphragm descends. This idea of a balloon down there. But it's made with the same, I believe, the muscle of the heart, the tongue, and down there and down, I guess at the sphincter, the pelvic floor. It's very similar muscle tone. So there's a relationship there, if you will, just like between the piezoelectric properties and the calcite microcrystals in the pineal and the piezoelectric crystals down at the sacrum. There's the male and female, the north and the south poles. And we want that signal for rest and digest. That's what the parasympathetic nervous system is good for, putting you back into a rest and digest, taking you out of the hypervigilant, hyperarousal, because that's based upon this whole hunter-gatherer brain. If you're about to hunt, if you see the animal, it's time to get the adrenaline, get the arousal. It's time to take action. It's time to get that oxygen, that fresh blood to go to your major to your limbs, so you can run, so you can fight. And it turns off the rest and digest. You can stop digesting your food. You have to prepare to protect yourself, to cover up your torso, so your pelvic floor engages, and you're prepared to protect your genitals and like your stomach and all that, and your heart. That's your evolutionary biology. But when it's time to get out of that vigilant state, breathing through the left nostril and re-engaging the diaphragm, so you do some deep diaphragmatic breaths, that puts you back into, I think it's the insular cortex, the insula, that helps you signal that you're safe again, which gives you the oxytocin. You're back in your mammalian home. You're back in the safety of the trees, so to speak. So that calming current that triggers the oxytocin to be released to dissolve the fear centers of the amygdala, replacing defensive boundaries with deep relational trust. Now we get to the crystal palace, the Hieros, Gamos, and the now. Okay, so now that I've got you with me, now that I've got my left eye engaged, I also have my right big toe. I go back to breathe through my right nostril. I feel my right big toe. I feel my right foot. I feel my calf. I let the energy and my awareness travel simultaneously up my right leg. That is the path of Venus in the Kabbalah, or Netzach, victory. And then I shift to my left leg, and that is the path of Mercury, or Hod. It's the descending path. As your left nostril is the cooling, descending energy of the, not the Dumai, it's the reception channel. It goes down the front in Qigong. It's where you surrender to Allah and let the energy wash over you because you brewed it. Now you get to receive this dopamine and oxytocin as the cerebrospinal fluid comes back down, and the vagus nerve transmits the signal from your brain down to the abdomen that you're safe, have no fear. And then the right nostril commands not just the right leg, but also the governing channel up the back body from the kidney points, where the right just above the sacrum bone, where it all begins. It starts the cerebrospinal fluid traveling back up the back body. This is the will aspect of consciousness, the right side, left brain guided will, conscious will aspect, the sympathetic or central nervous system. The ego, one might even say, this is where if you surrender your will in this aspect, the default mode network takes over, and that's what you don't want. So you keep the will engaged until you reach the top of the mountain. You reach this bridal chamber of the third ventricle but in order to really gain that feeling, you need the somatosensory cortex. So you have to go back to the left eye to re-engage the right hemispheric somatosensory, because if you lose the feeling of what's happening, you sort of lose consciousness of what you're doing in terms of the Qigong. You lose the yoga nidra, being able to control which nostril you're breathing through. All these require a right hemispheric sort of executive control. So as I say, we have to extinguish this ego by breathing into the left nostril. That cools the whole thing off, and this default mode network, it loses its cerebral blood flow and oxygen and basically turns off, but you're still consciously breathing. So you have the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and the striatum, so you get dopamine because you're engaged in this meditation, basically, which brings you into the now. You're just meditating in the now. And that's the whole show, really. You breathe in through your left nostril when you want just to modulate and cool off. It's pumping the brake on the car, so to speak, on the Merkabah vehicle. But then when you want to reheat up and go a little faster, go to 40 miles an hour, breathe in through the right nostril. And then you feel the big toe so you don't blow up your own ego. You don't want to manifest this default mode network. That's what Ian McGilchrist called the emissary. It shouldn't be the master of consciousness. That's why you can always look through your left eye, because that aspect of your brain is more connected to your heart. The right hemisphere is more of a somatosensory basis, so it's more engaged into the now experience and what you're feeling. So you don't want to get overly sensual or sensuous about it either. That's why you go to your left nostril breathing and blow the whole thing out before your ego can have a chance to get attached, to instantiate itself in some desire form, something that you want, something you need to make yourself real when you're not real. It's just an illusion based upon your shifting attention. So that's really where we are. This is the goal, to get to this state of quiescence, peace between the alpha, the theta, and the beta brainwaves. And we'll continue on our biophysical journey as long as we have dopamine and a diaphragmatic breath. God and the higher self will do the rest. Om Shanti Om.
sublime. Sit back, recline, let your love unwind. Uncoil love, let it rise above unconsciousness. Find your bliss like a hummingbird. Gotta get back to now. Gotta get back to Krishna and the cow. Gotta get back to now. Gotta get back to Krishna and the cow. Symbol.